We are on Lamed Dalet Amud Beis in Avodah Zara. Amar Rava, Tarvayu Tinanhi, third line from the bottom. So remember yesterday we were talking about whether you can be Mekadesh a woman with the peresh, with the dung of the animal. So we said that there's different psukim. Svara iba yisei makra. If you say the svara, so then we said that the oveit kochavim, you can't use the egel v'yochav because you actually want the dung in the animal. You enjoy it because it makes the animal fatter. But the dung of something else with the shor niskal, you don't necessarily want it, so you can use it. Or we said lo yidbak b'cha b'yadcha me'uma. You can't use anything from the avodah zara egel, but sako yisakel asher v'lo yacheles bisaro. Bisaro you can't eat, but you can use the rest of it. So Rava says we also have a Mishnah that supports this, or that supports both of these possibilities. If you remember, way back when, a few dapim ago, we had a question of mipnei ma asu gvinas akum. We need to know this for the whole daf today. Why did they make gvinas akum aser? So we said it can't be because of what? Because they use non-kosher milk, because at the end of the day, non-kosher milk cannot be made into cheese. Now that's something that we're going to challenge that assumption today. But at this point, until now, we've always assumed for the last 60 years that Lamaisa, the reason you can't use the reason that gvinas akum is aser was not because of non-kosher milk, because non-kosher milk cannot be made into cheese, as we spoke about yesterday, with powdered milk, etc. So what's the reason that gvinas akum is aser, cheese of an akum? So originally, if you remember, Rabbi Yeshua says, because they use rennet from a nevela, which is aser bana. Then we answered and said it can't be that because they use rennet from a nevela. Rabbi Yishmael said back to him, and I don't understand. We see that if the Kohen, if you remember, eats the rennet of an ola, he's not moel, it's not a problem. So I don't understand. How could it be that the rennet, this was all a few dapim ago, how could it be that you tell me that the rennet of an nevela is going to be a problem if we see that the rennet of an ola is not a problem? Therefore, you see that rennet is not considered part of the animal. So too, rennet is not considered part of the animal by the nevela as well. Rather, the reason that you can't go ahead and use and eat the gvinas akum is not because they use the rennet of a nevela, because they use the rennet of an egel that was brought to avodah zara. And since they want the animal to look fat, like we just said in the svara, since they want the animal to look fat, even though in general rennet, which again was the part of the lining of the stomach, even though the rennet in general is not considered to be part of the actual animal, and even if the animal is aser b'hana, the rennet will not be aser like by a nevela, like by an ola. When it comes to an egel of an oved kochavim of avodah zara, the rennet will be a problem because again, you want the rennet in there to look fat. Rabbi Yishmael rejects this as well and says, well, how could that be? Because if in fact you're telling me that we're worried that the rennet was used from an egel of avodah zara, then why is gvinas akum mutter b'hana? Gvinas akum should be aser b'hana. And then Rabbi Yeshua said back to him, so tell me the reason why gvinas akum is aser. And what did he say to him? Shir ashirim asher lishlomo. He didn't tell him the answer. He said, stop bothering me. Yishakeni mi nishikos piyu ki tovim dodecha miyayin. So today what we're going to discuss is this whole back and forth, and we're going to discuss why it was important to remember, and we're going to discuss what exactly the real reason is that gvinas akum is aser. Zok the Gemara. Midika Amar Le, originally, when he said to him, Mipnei Shema Midim Bekevas Nevela, when they originally, Rabbi Yoshua says the problem with gvinas akum is because they use the kevas of a nevela, the rennet of a nevela. V'kama hadar le, and Rabbi Yishmael said back to him, V'halo kevas ola chamura mi kevas nevela, and you see that the kevas of an ola is okay. What do you see over there? That the keva is separate. Miklal di isurei hana sharu pirshayu. You see that when you're dealing with something that's aser, still something that comes out of it, like the keba, can be okay. That's why the kebas nevela is okay. That's why the kebas ola is okay, and that's why the dung of a shor haniskal should be okay. Umidika amarle. So why is the dung of an egel of avodah zara not okay? Umidika amarle meshema midinos abekevas egle avodas kochavim v'kama hadrle. You're right, and the keba of an egle of avodas kochavim is aser. And if I'm gonna double down and say imkein lama lo asarta behana. So what do you see from there? You clearly see that one miklal de avodas kochavim asu pirshayu. You clearly see that just like the keva of an nevela and the keva of an ola on one side is considered to be separate, and therefore you could theoretically use it, and therefore that can't be the reason why gvinas akum is aser. On the other extreme, you clearly see that the keva of an egla of avodah zara is clearly not okay, and therefore we would say that the dung of an egla of avodah zara would not be okay as well. And that was the whole back and forth. So we have a proof from the back and forth as well. The obvious question becomes, why didn't he answer him? So this is the last problem that he had. Again, at the end we said, why is Gvinas Akum Aser? Because they use a keba of an egel of Avodah Zara. So he says back to him, it can't be the reason. Because at the end of the day, if they're using the keba of an egel of Avodah Zara, then it should be Aser B'Hana. V'lihadale, why didn't he say back to him, no, I'll tell you why it's different, why it's not. Mishum de Leseli Surah Be'enai. Maybe the reason why it's not Aser B'Hana is because at the end of the day, when you use the rennet, what happens to the rennet? The rennet goes into the cheese. You don't actually see the rennet when the final product is done. So maybe the reason that is Aser B'Achila, in general, you're right. When something comes out, when a keba comes out of an Avodah Zara, it should be Aser B'Hana. But in this case, by the cheese, where the rennet is totally eaten up by the cheese, where you don't see any remnant of the rennet at all, maybe Lamaisa, it should be Mutter B'Hana, and that's why it's Mutter B'Hana. So too, just like we saw the moritz, which was like this fish concoction, which we know might have yayin nesach in it. We said it's aser to eat, but it's not aser b'hana. And the Gemara assumes the reason that it wasn't aser b'hana is because the yayin nesach, even though it's in there and therefore, or it might be in there, therefore you can't eat it. At the end of the day, we're not going to make it aser b'hana because the yayin nesach gets swallowed up and you can't even notice it. So maybe also over here, he should have answered him. The reason that gvinas akum is mutter b'hana is because even though it's aser b'achila, because the rennet might be in there, but l'maisa it gets swallowed up within the cheese. Says the Gemara, he couldn't have said that. Amri hacha, because the rennet case is different. Kevan de ok me kamokim. Since by the rennet it creates the cheese, chashav le keman de isei le surah be'enei. Even though you don't see it, it's chashav enough because without the rennet you can't create the cheese. The yayin nesach that's added to the moris, to that fish, that's not what's creating the thing. That's just replacing some of the moris, like we said, where sometimes it's cheaper to put in wine, you put in wine. But where the rennet is actually creating the cheese, you can't say, even though you don't see it with the final cheese product. When I buy cheese in the store, I don't see the rennet there. But it clearly was instrumental in producing the cheese. Therefore what? Therefore, even though I don't see it, we can't say that it's batal, quote unquote, to the cheese. Therefore, by definition, if you're going to tell me that the reason that gvinas akum is aser is because of the rennet of the avodah zara in it, then if the rennet of avodah zara is aser b'hana, then the cheese should be aser b'hana as well. And therefore, he couldn't answer him that. And therefore, the question of lemaisa, so why is it not aser b'hana, is a good question. And that's why we needed to reject the fact that gvinas akum is aser because of the rennet of an ovdei avodah zara. Therefore, we've rejected the fact, we don't know yet. We've rejected that it's not aser because of the rennet of nevela, because you see that the rennet of nevela should actually be mutter, like the rennet of an ola. And it's not aser because of the rennet of an egel avodah zara, because if it was from the rennet of an egel of avodah zara that we were worried about, then the cheese itself would be aser b'hana, which we know it's not. It's only aser b'achila, it's not aser b'hana. So we're left with the question, why is gvinas akum aser? Okay, today with hashkachas and everything is different, but why is gvina that's made by an akum aser? Says the Gemara, Hisil l'davar acher. So he asked him, L'maisa, you just rejected my two answers. Don't be a guy that just asks me questions. Tell me the answer. So first of all, I was going to say, what did he say to him? He said, Ki tovim dodecha miyayin. When he tried to push him off and not tell him the answer, he said, oh, Ki tovim dodecha miyayin. The love is even greater than wine. What does that mean? Ki asa ravdi mi amar. What did he mean? What was Rabbi Yoshua saying by quoting Sukkim from Shir Hashem? He wasn't just diverting the conversation. He was giving Rabbi Yishmael Musar to say, stop asking for the reason of Gvinas Akum. Ki asar avdimi amra amra knesses Yisrael ifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu ribono shel olam arevim alai divrei dodecha yoser miyena shel Torah. In certain senses, what we're saying is ki tovim dodecha miyayin. In certain senses, the divrei of dodecha, the divrei of those that you love, Hashem, Chazal, are even more special to me than the actual Yena Shel Torah, than the words of the Torah Shebechsav. That's what they're saying. So what was he saying back to him? He was saying back to him, stop asking me, and realize that the words of Chazal, who made this gezerah that Gvinas Akum is aser, are sweet to the Jewish people, and you should stop hacking me for what the reason is. Who cares? When the rabbis say something, you listen to what they say. Let's say that again. When the rabbis say something, you listen to what they say. That's what the Musar he was telling him was. Says in Gemara, Maishna Haikra Deshile. So why did he use this specific pasuk? Because you can learn something else in this pasuk as well. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi v'Timer Rabbi Shimon bar Ami Mireisha Dekra Karmel. You can learn something else from the beginning of the pasuk. Ishakeini minishikos pihu. Kiss me with the kiss of your mouth. Amar le Yishmal Achi. What else was he telling him? Rabbi Yeshua was telling Mishmal Chashok Sifzosacha Zubezu. Go ahead and compress your lips together. Stop talking. Ve'al tivar la'ashiv. Don't be so hasty and so quick to answer me. Enough is enough. The words of the rabbis are sweet, and leave me alone and stop asking me and just don't eat gvinas akum. My timer. What was the reason that he didn't want to tell him? Amar Ula v'temer of Shmuel barabba gezerah chadasha hi ve'ei mefakfim ba. Because at the time of their conversation, the gezerah against gvinas akum was relatively new. And as we know that if you explore the reasons for things when they're relatively new, you're going to have one guy say, oh, that reason doesn't apply to me. Another guy's going to say, oh, we don't have that problem here. And that's only in a warm climate. Unfortunately, today, in 2018, we have people that are doing that for things that have been around for thousands of years and saying that they no longer apply. But the point is that when they had this conversation, he didn't want to tell them the reason. He wanted to wait a little bit of time till they actually kept Gvinas Akum. After you've been keeping it for a while, then I'll tell you the reason, because it's not about the reason. You got to keep it regardless. You want to understand, you can understand. And that's what we hold about halacha in general. Nasev and Ishma. Do the Mishnah, do the mitzvos, and then Ishma. You want to understand, fine. But even if you don't understand, you got to do them anyway. Says the Gemara, what's pshat here? What was the gezerah? My gezerah. So what's this gezerah? That you couldn't eat Gvinas Akum. Again, this is the reason why they didn't eat Gvinas Akum. Amar B'Shimon Pazi, Amar Ribal, Mishum Nikor. What's Nikor? Nikor is back to the snakes. Because we're worried that the snakes deposited their venom inside of the milk before it was made into cheese. The Lemele Mishum Nikor, I understand. If that's the reason, so what's Rabbi Yoshua making such a big deal about? What's Rabbi Yoshua making such a big deal about? Rabbi Shmuel just wants to know what's the reason for the Gzera. Should have said the reason you can't eat Gvinas Akum is because we're worried that they leave their milk uncovered overnight, and we're worried that the snakes are going to go deposit their venom, and then you're going to make it into cheese. That is quite fascinating. That we're worried about them. Says the Gemara, Kideula, like Ula, the Amar Ula, Ki Gazre Gzerasa b'Ma'arava. When they make a Gzera in Bavel, Lo Miglu Taima Tracer Yarche Shasa. They don't tell them the reason for 12 years. 12 months. That's what I thought. So what does it say? Tracer Yarche Shasa. 12 months. Dilma ik anish to lo sfir leva asfi lizil zulebe. Like we were saying, they don't give the reason for 12 months. So seemingly they were having this conversation within 12 months, and it's fascinating because he was talking to a Talmud Chacham. He wasn't just talking to a Stam guy on the street and said, I can't tell you the reason because you're not going to listen to me. He was talking to Rabbi Yishmael, and he was still worried that by telling Rabbi Yishmael the reason within 12 months, Rabbi Yishmael was going to say, maybe it doesn't apply to us. That's interesting. Says the Gemara, that's why they didn't share it. But at the end of the day, that's the reason. The reason that you can't eat Gvinas Akum is because we're worried about the snake depositing its venom inside of the cheese. Megadif bar Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah made a gesture and said, that's ridiculous. Ela me'ata, according to your svara, yevesha tishtare, yashen tishtare. If you have cheese that's dried out, certain type of cheese, or aged cheese, it should be mutter, and yet we know it's not mutter. What's the connection between snakes and aged cheese? So the Gemara says, Amar Chanina, Yavesh mutter ein manicho liyavesh. Yashin mutter ein manicho liyashin. Because just like by liquids, the mitzias is that if there's snake venom in the milk, the mitzias is that it would never become aged cheese. It can never dry out, like we said, by the liquids as well. Certain things cannot happen by definition in mitzias to the liquid if there's snake venom in there. So once you see that the wine became aged, I think we said, once you see that the wine became yashan, once it became old, so we said that it was okay because clearly there was no venom in there. So too by the cheese. You're telling me that we're worried about Gvinas Akum because of the snake venom, but Lamaisa, we know that Gvinas Akum is across the board, and if it was true that it was because of the snake venom, so then aged cheese would be okay. Then cheese that's old or dry would be okay because by definition there's no venom in there, and yet we said that it's usher. Therefore, it can't be that Gvinas Akum is because of the snake venom. So what's the reason? I'm on the edge of my seat. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chanina, rather, why is Gvinas Akum usher? Because it's impossible not to have any traces of milk. What does this mean? Look at Rashi to the right. Bein guma shel gvina nishar min hachalav v'chalav shechalva ove kochavim bein Yisrael reyu aser dilma arebe chalav tamei v'chalav tamei eino omed. V'im arev tamei bitar hatamei nishar min isyuve dechal v'atar shekorin mishka v'chalav tamei aser min haTorah yafin Allah. This is very interesting. This basically gets rid of everything that we thought until now. We thought that it's okay if you have cheese to eat the cheese because you could assume that what? That it must have been tahor milk because tahor milk becomes cheese and tummy milk doesn't become cheese. The problem now, says the Gemara, is the following svara. The Gemara says that when you use cheese, when you use kosher milk, it's not 100% true that it all becomes cheese. when you use kosher milk, we know that the milk turns into cheese when you use the rennet, but there's also some whey left. W-H-E-Y. There's also going to be some milk, kosher milk, that doesn't turn into cheese. So what's going to happen now? So let's say that they mixed in non-kosher milk. There'll be no way for you to know, because you're going to make cheese with kosher milk. So you're going to say, well, the fact that it's cheese shows that it must be kosher. Well, first of all, what happened was that when you made the cheese, so you're going to have some whey left over. That whey, there's no way to know if there's no way to know if that whey is from kosher milk or not, because it could either be the leftover kosher milk, or it could be the non-kosher milk that was mixed in. And not just that, cheese, he says, has holes in it. And inside of the holes of the cheese, you have moisture. And if, in fact, they mixed in the non-kosher milk, again, we don't know if the moisture, because you could say, okay, so then just separate the whey, and when you have the final cheese product, so first of all, one can argue, well, if it was made with the non-kosher milk, then it won't be fine. But at the end of the day, even if you want to say separate the whey, and now you have this block of cheese, that block of cheese is still going to be a problem, because within the block of cheese, you have holes, and in those holes is moisture, which is impossible to remove all the moisture. And that moisture, when we look at that moisture, and I say, is that kosher moisture or not kosher moisture? The cheese itself is definitely kosher milk, because it wouldn't become cheese if it was non-kosher milk. But the moisture that's left in the holes, that could either be the whey of the kosher milk, or that could be the non-kosher milk that he maybe put in there, which can turn into cheese and stayed liquid, and therefore got into the holes of the cheese. Good? Clear. Fine. So the Gemara says that's why you can't use, because our svara originally was not true. If, in fact, kosher milk turned into cheese and there was nothing left over, and non-kosher milk couldn't be turned into cheese, and you have a piece of cheese here, nothing to talk about, you can eat it. But because of this fact that it's not 100% true and that there is some whey involved, and then the holes and the moisture could be non-kosher, that's going to be the gzeira of eating gvinas akum. Says the Gemara, Shmuel Amar, Shmuel gives another reason. You said before that it was because they use the rennet of the nevela. We said it can't be, because rennet we saw from the Ola, the rennet is considered to not be part of the animal. But he says no, they also possibly can use the skin of the stomach. Not just the rennet, the meat of the stomach, the skin of the stomach. And the skin of the stomach, you cannot argue, is not part of the animal. So a gezerah that they might have used the skin of the stomach in order to be mamid, in order to make this cheese, you can't eat the cheese. If they only use the keva, if we're only worried that they would have used the keva of nevela, then there's nothing to be worried about. It's not part of it. That's why that can't be the reason why gvinas akum is aser. But the reason could be that gvinas akum is aser is because sometimes they'll use the actual skin of the stomach, and the skin of the stomach you can't say is separate than the nevela. And if the nevela is aser and you use the skin of the stomach, which is of the skin of the nevela, then the cheese is going to be aser as well. Hakeba gufa shari. That implies that Shmuel holds that the actual rennet itself would be mutter, like we were saying until now. But Shmuel seems to argue on this point, V'atanan, because Shmuel says, Kevas ha'ovei kochavim v'shal nevela rezo asura, that the rennet of an ovei kochavim and the rennet of a nevela is asur. Says the Gemara, Vavina, by the Gemara they're asked, Atu de ovei kochavim lav nevela. What do you mean the rennet of a nevela and the rennet of an ovei kochavim? By definition, an ovei kochavim, the animal that's shechted by an ovei avodah zara, by definition is a nevela, because it wasn't shechted right. What it means is kebat shchita ovei kochavim nevela asura. You see what he says though, that the keba itself, not the or of the keba, the keba itself, the actual rennet of an ovei kochavim, of an egel of ovei kochavim, is considered to be nevela. So you clearly see that Shmuel doesn't hold like what we thought until now. We thought everybody holds that the keba, the actual rennet of a nevela, will be mutter. Shmuel seems to hold that the rennet of a nevela is aser, not just the or of the rennet of the nevela, the actual nevela. Then we said lo kasha, no, that's not an issue. Kan, when Shmuel says that it's aser, kan kodem chazara. That was before the chazara. That was when Rabbi Yeshua was saying that gvinas akum is aser because of the nevela because of the rennet of a nevela. And Shmuel came along and said, yes, the rennet of a nevela is aser. Kan la'achar chazara. But later on, when Rabbi Yishmael came to him and said, no, the rennet of nevela is actually mutter, just like we see the rennet of an ola is mutter, then Shmuel himself was choser and also said, you're right, the rennet is aser, and Mishnah lo zazim imkama, we just didn't change the Mishnah, but again, he holds the rennet is going to be mutter, but the or of the rennet will be aser. So we've had two reasons right now why gvinas akum is going to be aser. Gvinas akum at this point, we've rejected everything else. Gvinas akum will either be aser because it's impossible to tell that no non-kosher milk was used, because there's always going to be some moisture and that might be non-kosher milk. And the second reason it'll be aser is because gzeira, that they might have used not the rennet of a nevela or of an oved avodah zara, but that they might have actually used the ore of the rennet, the actual stomach lining, and if they use that, that's clearly part of the animal, and therefore Gvinas Akum will be aser. It can't be that we're worried that they used the rennet, the lining of the oved avodah zara animal, because if we were worried about that, then the Gvinas Akum would not only be aser ba'achila, it would be aser ba'na as well. Okay, this is Geshmak. When you understand the Gemara, it's fascinating. Says the Gemara, Rav Malkia, a third reason, Mishmei de Rav Ada bar Ava Amar, there's another reason, nothing to do with how they make the cheese, nothing to do with the fact that they use this keba or that keba, whether there was non-kosher milk or not. No, that's not how they did it. The problem was at the very end of the process, the reason you can't eat Gvinas Akum is because how do they make it nice and attractive, not in the Sobeys, but Lamaisa, like if you look at Sobeys, how do they make all that cheese nice and attractive in the non-kosher places? How do they do it? By putting some pig fat all over it, by painting it with pig fat to make it nice and shiny, like we paint our challahs with egg. I didn't realize until I watched my wife make challah. You paint your challah with like egg yolk in order to make it nice and shiny. That's how you get the shiny egg yolk on the top. So too, they used to paint their gvina, they would paint it with shuman. Therefore, if you bought gvinas akum, even if you're not worried that the actual gvina, that the cheese is a problem, you have to be worried that the topping, quote unquote, of the cheese is a problem. Rav Chisda Amar, a fourth reason, because we're worried that they actually used yayin nesech, vinegar, to be mamid. Not only can you be mamid with rennet, you can be mamid with yayin nesech, and if you use yayin nesech, if you use chometz, it's port avodah zara. Clearly, the cheese is going to be aser. We're going to ask in a second. That can't be the reason, because if that's the reason, then what? It shouldn't just be aser be'achila. It should be aser ba'na as well if you're using chometz of yayin nesech. And Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Neshim Amidun B'sraf ha'orla. If you ever wondered, if you use the sap of a tree, it could actually make cheese as well. So we're worried that they use the sap of an orla tree. And the Gemara is going to ask in a second too. According to this reason, it's also a problem because if it's an orla tree, it's aser ba'na. And if you use the sap of an orla tree, then if that was the worry, then Gvinas Akum should not just be aser ba'achila, it should be aser ba'na as well. But that's fascinating. You can use the sap of an orla tree. Come on, who's this like? Ki haitana detanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, hamamid bisrafa orla aser mipnei shehu peri. The sap of an orla tree is considered like the fruit of an orla tree, and just like the fruit of an orla tree is aser, you can't use the sap of an orla tree, and if you use it for gvina, it's going to be aser, the gvina itself. Says Gemara, filu temer Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua argues on this and says, no, you're allowed to use the sap of an orla tree. So what's the kasha? Why is Rabbi Yeshua arguing? Says Gemara, ad kan lo palig Rabbi Yeshua led Rabbi Eliezer ela bekatfa de guza, va bekatfa de peri mode. No, you're right. Rabbi Yeshua agrees that if you use the sap of the actual fruit, that's aser. They argue about what happens if it's not only sap on a fruit. Where is there also sap on a tree? On the bark or on the leaves. If you use the sap of the bark or of the leaves, the question is that considered to be part of the fruit as well? Rabbi Yeshua says that's not part of the fruit. You can use that in general. That's not considered to be orla, and therefore you can take that sap and use it for gvina or for anything else. He agrees you can't use the sap of the pri, and he agrees that the gezerah of gvinas akum is because we're worried that you might have used the sap of a fruit. This is just parenthetically a separate argument. Rabbi Yeshua says you can use the sap of the bark and the sap of the leaves, as we'll see in a second. And the other opinion says you can't use any sap of an orla tree at all. Says the Gemara, behind the Tatan, Rabbi Yeshua, Shamati b'per shehamamid b'sraf ha'olin of the leaves, u'v'sraf ha'ikar in the roots of the bark is mutter, b'sraf ha'pagin of the fruit, which over here is our unripe figs, asun ishahu peri. Again, the point for us is the same, that if you're mamid b'sraf, that why can't you eat Gvinas Akum according to this reason? Because we're worried that you might have used the sap of an orla tree. Since sap can make cheese, we're worried that this cheese that you're about to eat from Gvinas Akum, from an Akum, was used with the sap of an orla tree, and therefore it'll be aser. Says the Gemara, Bein l'Rav Chisda, Bein l'Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Titzer bahana, Kasha, you're right. It can't be those two answers, seemingly, because the last two answers, like I told you, it's going to be a problem. Because if you say the reason you can't eat Gvinas Akum is because we're worried that they used yayin nesech vinegar, or if you say that the reason that you can't eat Gvinas Akum is because we're worried that they might have used the sap from an orla tree, those two things are aser ba'na. And if you use the products of those things, if you actually use the yayin nesech, or we're worried that you're using the sap, then the cheese itself should be aser ba'na as well. But we know the halacha is that Gvinas Akum is aser ba'achila and not aser ba'na. Therefore, it must not be one of those reasons. And again, therefore, we're back to our original three reasons, besides for all the ones that we rejected, that you can't eat it because we're worried that they used non-kosher milk, and that's what some of the liquid is that you see in the holes, or they used the ore of the kevas nevela, or they painted it with shuman chazir. Those are the three standing reasons as to why Gvinas Akum would be aser. Which one have we not spoken about yet? We haven't spoken anything about chasnas, about intermarriage and the like. Darash Rav Nachman Breder Rav Chisda, My dichsiv, what does it mean? Now we're going back to Shir Hashirim. What does it mean? L'reach shmanecha tovim, that your shemen, your oil smells good. Lema Talmud Chacham domer. What is a Talmud Chacham similar to? What's he compared to? Litzal luchis shel pleitin, to the flask of balsam oil. What does that mean? Megula, if the flask of balsam oil is uncovered, reicha nodef, then its reach spreads. Mechusa, if the bottle of cologne is covered, ein reicha nodef, you don't smell it. Similar to a Talmud Chacham. If he's uncovered, if he teaches other people Torah, then he spreads his smell. If he's covered, if he doesn't get out of his own 4 amos, then his smell doesn't spread. V'lo od ella dvarim shemechusin mimenu mizgalin lo. Rather, things, another interpretation, what does it mean? L'reach shmanecha tovim, things that are hidden to other people are revealed to him. Shenamar, what does it say further in the pasuk? Alemos ahivucha, kareba alumos. That to him, to my loved ones, alumos, the hidden things are revealed. And finally, v'lo od ella shemalach hamaves oavo. This is interesting. That the malach hamaves loves him. Shenamar alemos ahivucha, karebe al maves. The malach hamaves ahivucha loves him. V'lo od ella shenochel shnei olamos. He is nochel, he acquires 2 olamos, echad olam haza v'echad olam haba. Shenamar alemos kariba olamos. What's the bottom line? It's worthwhile to be a Talmud Chacham. Zak the Mishnah. Ve'elu dvarim shel ovdei kochavim asurin ve'eni suran israna. Here is a list, besides for Gvinas Akum, like we just mentioned, here is a list of things that are asur, but only asur ba'achila, not asur ba'hana. Chalav shel chalvu oved kochavim ve'eni Yisrael v'reho. Non-chalav Yisrael milk is asur ba'achila. Obviously, there's a whole tshuva of Rav Moshe, but mitzad the Mishnah, a chalav that an oved kochavim milked and a Yisrael is not watching him is asur ba'achila. V'hapas, pas akum that they make is asur ba'achila. V'hashemen shalahen, their oil is asur ba'achila. We're going to see that they retracted this zera of shemen. Rabbi u'Beis had tira shemen. Rabbi and his Beis Din was matir shemen. V'hashilkus, their cooked food. Ukvashin, shadar kalate letochan yayin v'chometz. They're pickles. Can't eat their pickles, because how do they make pickles? With yayin nesach and vinegar. Vitrit trufa, they're minced fish. Why? The little pieces of fish that are cut up, because what could they mix inside of that? Non-kosher fish. Vitzir, and if you have fish brine, she'ein ba daga kalbi shotetas bo. Very interesting. There was a fish brine, and inside of kosher fish brine, by definition, the mitzias is that this non-kosher kilbis fish goes into kosher fish brine. That means if you have kosher fish brine, if it doesn't have non-kosher fish inside of it, that means if this fish is not swimming around in the fish brine, then it's going to be awesome. You got to take it out, obviously, but if you see that there's this kosher fish brine, if you see fish brine without this non-kosher fish in it, that means it's not really kosher. V'hachilek, what's a chilek? We had that yesterday. Those are the little fishy that don't have fins and scales when they're small. V'kored shel chiltis, this type of grain of chiltis. Why can't you eat it? Because we're worried that the ovdei kochavim cut it, since it's very hard to cut. They cut it with a very sharp knife that had a lot of dirt on it and a lot of treifus on it. Umelech shilkondis, the salt of shilkondis. Hare elu asurin ve'eni suran israna. It's also to eat them, but not to use them for anah. Chalav l'may nechoshla. What are we worried about? The milk of an ovdei kochavim. Imishu michlufei tahar chir tamei yarok. If it's that we're worried that they switched it for non-kosher milk, you can just look at the milk, because cow's milk is white and non-kosher milk is yellowish. Interesting, I didn't realize that. V'imishum iruve, and if it's because we're worried that they have kosher milk, but they mixed in some non-kosher milk and the whiteness will get rid of the yellowish of the miut. Nekum, so what should you do? You should be able to buy chalav akum. You should be able to try to what? Make it into cheese. And if you see that you can make it into cheese, you'll know, again, we're about to reject it, because we just rejected this svara. We said it doesn't mean that it's necessarily 100% kosher. But at this point, the Gemara is going back to what it thought before. Take the milk, buy it in sobies, make it into cheese, and if you see that you make it into cheese, then you can drink the milk. The Amar Mar chalav-torah-comment, chalav-tamei ein omed. Says the Gemara, idika by ligvina hachanam. You're right. If you want to buy it for cheese, you can buy it for cheese, and then go ahead and make the cheese. And if you see that it becomes cheese, then you can eat it. No, lekimcha. No, but if you're buying it for the milk itself, or to make a dairy dish with the milk, that would be where it would be usher, because there's no way to tell if it's actually going to be mamid. Says v'nishko minei kali v'nekum. This is where we're going to reject, even if you buy it for cheese. So why don't we say that when you're buying it for milk? So take a little bit of the milk, pour it out, put a little bit of rennet in it, and see if it turns into cheese. If it turns into cheese, you could drink the rest of the milk bottle. Says the Gemara, Kevan de betar nami ika nisyuve de lo mekim de lo kaime leka lo mekam ala demil. So like we just said, since even in regular tahor milk, there's going to be some of it that's going to become liquid, that's going to become whey. Basically, the Gemara seems to be at this point rejecting the entire test. The entire does it become cheese test at this point of the Gemara is being rejected because the fact that it becomes cheese doesn't prove anything, because even if it becomes cheese, it doesn't mean that it's kosher milk, because there could still be non-kosher milk mixed in. That part is not becoming cheese. That's the part that's going to be the whey, or that's the part that's going to be the lachluchis on the cheese. That's why so now it seems like again the Gemara is rejecting and saying even if you buy the cheese, or even if you buy milk that turns into cheese, this test of turning it into cheese at this point the Gemara seems to be saying is not a good test, because the Maisa doesn't necessarily mean that non-kosher milk was not mixed in. And therefore it seems like chalav, we're worried that so at the end of the day, why is chalav aser? So it sounds like because we're worried that the tahor actually got mixed with tameh. You won't be able to see the tameh because it's not going to be the yellowish tint, because it's going to be mainly white, and you're not going to be able to necessarily taste it. And the fact that you can make it into cheese is not going to prove anything, because at the end of the day, even the kosher milk will not be able to be made 100% into cheese. And when you're left with the whey, you won't know whether it's kosher or non-kosher. So that's what we're worried about mixing it. And that's why today, with the whole tshuva of Rav Moshe, that there's government supervision and there's all these different fines and you have cameras and everything. So Lamaisa, he says, according to many, they say you could drink non-Chalav Yisrael. It hasn't been watched by a Jew, but there are definitely people that keep Chalav Yisrael. Nobody that I know, but whatever. Zog the Gemara, v'hapas. The bread, pas akum, is going to be aser. Amar Rabbi Kahana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, pas lo hutra bebezin. The pas was never rescinded in bezin, and you can never eat pas akum. Meklal de ikaman de shari. It sounds like they're, now again, it wasn't rescinded as opposed to like shemen. But meklal de ikaman de shari, that sounds like somebody actually came to bezin and said, we got to rescind the pas, or else what's the chiddush? It sounds like somebody came to bezin and said, we should rescind this zera of pas akum. Who actually came in? Yes, there were people. Why? Dechiyasa Rav Dimi Amar, because Rav Dimi said, Pamachas Yatsa Rebbe l'sadeh. One time Rebbe went out to the field. Vehevi Oved Kochavim lefanav paspornim ma'afasa. And one time an Oved Kochavim brought him bread in the field. Amar Rebbe Kamana Pazu. This is so beautiful. Maro Chachamim Loso. Why did the Chachamim say that pas of an akum is aser? Maro Chachamim. What do you mean? What did the Chachamim see? Mishum Chasas. How could Rebbe say that? We know that the reason you can't eat pas akum is because we're afraid that if your next door neighbor who is not Jewish starts cooking you nice breads, before you know it, you're going to start eating their breads. Then you're going to start going to their house. Then you're going to start mixed dancing, and then you're going to start marrying into them. Says the Gemara, what Rebbe was saying is, I understand the gzera for pas akum. What I don't understand is, why is there a gzera of pas akum in the sadeh? When you're going to meet somebody, you're meeting them in the city. You're not going out to the sadeh to meet them. Says the Gemara, kisfur na'am hitir Rebbe bepas. So people heard this, and when they heard Rebbe say, oh, why is pas akum? It's so beautiful, this pas. Why is it usher in the sadeh? People said, oh, Rebbe must hold that pas akum is okay. Velohi, Rebbe lo hitir es pas. No, he was just questioning. And he wasn't saying that pas akum necessarily is even mutter in the sadeh. He's just saying that if you use this svara, one can argue that maybe there's more of a svara to say that pas akum should be allowed in the sadeh. But Lamaisa, he still said, no, it's not allowed in the sadeh, seemingly, because you could still have chasnas, you could still have friendship in the sadeh as well. Says the Gemara. But those are the people who came to Beis and said, wait, Rebbe said that pas akum is okay. Then they said, okay, let's go ask Rebbe. He said, you say pas akum was okay? No. They say this about Rav Moshe Feinstein as well. They claim that if you ask him if he actually ate Chalav Yisrael, so people would say that he didn't actually, that they would say that he only ate Chalav Yisrael, even though his tshuva, again, it's a little bit different, but his tshuva said that you can eat non-Chalav Yisrael, but supposedly he himself only drank Chalav Yisrael. This is a little bit different, where Rebbe is basically saying, I never said that it was mutter. Rav Moshe said it was mutter for Chalav Yisrael, for Chalav non-Yisrael under certain circumstances. Rav Yosef Yitamer of Shmuel Bar Yehuda Amar, and it's important to note that even within Rav Moshe Feinstein, you can't drink milk anywhere in the world. You can't drink milk in Europe. You can't drink milk in places where there's no government supervision. His whole chiddush and his whole psak and kula was based on the fact that there's some type of government supervision, which doesn't exist in many parts of the world and in many parts of Europe.
He is now in India, David Wolf.
Yeah.
He said me, and he wasn't able to drink.
He's not able to drink the milk.
Yeah.
But he ran with Torah in motion. They don't drink milk. They drink gold water
So
and stuff.
he bought some.
But they serve food for them. I'm saying they don't have to get their own food. But he brought a little bit of milk with him.
Yeah.
How do you keep the milk fresh?
For his coffee.
Interesting. Oh, you bring like
the milks that you can
the milks,
purchase.
right? The powdered milks, whatever. Yeah.
Powder, it's even-
Okay. Let's just finish up here. Rav Yosef Yitamer Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda Amar Lo Kachaya Ma'aser. No, that wasn't the Ma'aser with Rebbe in the field. Ela Amru. What did they say? Pamachas halach Rebbe l'makom echad v'ra pas dachul l'tamidim. No, the story goes differently. You misheard the story. One time he went to a place and he saw that the Talmidim had no bread. Amar Rebbe Ein kan palter. There's no commercial bread here. Kisvur Am Lomar. They ran to Beis and said, "Look, Rebbe said that pas palter is okay. Palter ove kochavim is allowed. V'hu lo Amar ela palter Yisrael." No, Rebbe was just talking about palter Yisrael. You can buy commercialized bread from a Jewish bakery. Amar b'chelbo, no, afilu man amar palter ove kochavim, which is how again we seem to paskin that you could buy bread that's under kosher supervision from, as long as you know that all the ingredients are kosher, from a non-Jewish palter, right? Because commercial bakery, you're not worried that you're going to go in there and start schmoozing with the owner. You go and you buy your pot and you leave, as opposed to a neighbor. Lo amar nela deleka palter Yisrael, avamakom deika palter Yisrael lo. And this is also a very interesting halacha. We're saying that we just throw around pas palter is okay. Pas palter, according to Gemara, is only okay when there's no Jewish bread to be found. But if you go into Sobeys and buy Jewish bread, you can't necessarily just go into Sobeys and buy the pas palter that's on the shelf. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, I'm not saying we pass on that halacha ma'aseh, but that's what the Gemara seems to say. Rabbi Yochanan Amar filu man damar palter ove kochavim hani mili besada aval be'ir lo mishum chasnus. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, even if you say palter ove kochavim is allowed, that would only be maybe seemingly when there's no palter Yisrael and only in the field, when there's basically nothing else around and you're not in the ear. Ibu havu manchis va'achil pas abe metzrei. This guy named Abu was biting into and eating bread of akum on the borders of the fields. Nobody talked to him. Why? Because he's eating pas akum, and seemingly it was mida keneged mida. He's using his mouth to do something aser. We're going to use our mouth to not talk to him. Again, halacha l'maisa, please speak to your local posek. But the Gemara clearly seems to say here that pas Yisrael is the way to go, not just during Aseret Yemei Tshuva, and even pas paltu, which we seem to have a heter for, is definitely not lechatchila, but according to the Gemara, definitely b'di'evet. But again, you can argue that when you're in Toronto and you can go into Sobeys and buy fresh bread, which is clearly pas Yisrael, one can argue that one should not buy. Again, based on this Gemara, one should argue that one should not buy, which we always do, to buy the bread that's been packaged. Even though in Canada it's much harder to find packaged bread than it is to find it in the United States. Kosher bread.